definitely watch it if you have not. Nicolas Maduro sat down with the Gray Zone. It was Max Blumenthal, I believe, right? It was Max Blumenthal. Yeah, sat down with Max Blumenthal from the Gray Zone and just had a very candid conversation about the entire situation going on with in Venezuela, and with regard to the United States involvement in Venezuela, and in regard to some of the well, really just the propaganda coming out of our media, and Maduro did a damn good job really countering the propaganda and that was coming out of our media. But Sophia, what did you think about the interview overall, and what were some key points that stood out to you?
Even though he only talked about this for a minute or so, I think something that was really cool is that he wanted to break away from the propaganda, and he specifically said that using social media, alternative media, YouTube, Periscope, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of those platforms to be able to actually speak the truth instead of just what he referred to what the mainstream was doing as being agents to the intelligence agencies.
Mhm.
So I think that's exactly, and he said that exactly how it is.
Yeah,
So
you know, it's crazy that it's funny that you mentioned that 'cause I thought that. I was like, hold up, did he just say use alternative media? Like, but it's
yeah, I
true.
wasn't. Yeah,
It's true because like obviously Max and Gray Zone are alternative media. I'm sure he's worked with Abby Martin to a degree with Telesur. Like it's crazy to me how much of a role alternative media has to play now in just correctly shaping the outlook on the United States empire and its effect on the rest of the world. Because, I mean, during that interview, like Maduro said, the stuff that you're not going to hear about is their CLAP program, how they brought food to 6 million families in some parts of the country once every 20 days, in other parts of the country once every 15 days, which would be basically how often most people go grocery shopping every 2 weeks. And he asked very candidly, and it was a good question. He said, do they do that in the United States? He's like, like we're getting sanctioned, hit, blockades blocking our food and all kinds of stuff. And we're still finding ways to do what we have to do and use the government to the good for the benefit of the people. But the only way that we're going to be able to get that message out was is through alternative media. So that was like a good shout out. So he definitely got some brownie points there. That's probably what he was doing. He ain't slick. Slick old propagandist Maduro. Um, I know this is going to sound like for some people probably like a point that's innocuous, but like for me, it was the fact that he actually couldn't speak English. That was probably the thing that stood out the most to me was because so we know Guaido at this point, right? If you don't know who Guaido is, that's the opposition leader, fake opposition leader. He's not really in charge of shit, let's be honest.
yeah,
But he's the identified opposition leader according to the United States. So Guaido speaks English, and he speaks English pretty fluently, actually. And the reason why is because he's a tool of the United States. He has two postgraduate degrees from Georgetown. He's 36 years old. He woke up one day and, oh, by the way, I'm the president now, Maduro. You got to deal with it. And that speaks volumes because I don't know if you know this, people, but Maduro's a bus driver. He was a bus driver, and his background seemingly matches up with his inability to communicate in English, at least on a fluent level. Um, and it speaks volumes to like what the opposition is and what they care about, and then what Maduro cares about and what he's about. So Guaido never talks about the mestizos of Venezuela. He never talks about how the black people are getting treated. He never talks about the white supremacy there. All things Maduro talks about. He talks about all the problems in Venezuela, but he never mentioned the CLAP program. He didn't mention that 6 million families are getting food every 2 weeks in spite of our sanctions. Um, like I said, it's kind of his inability to speak English in some, I guess in people or in some people's mind they would think that's like why would he not be able to speak English? But for me, it's like because he's not cut from the thread of the United States empire. So why
yeah.
would he need to?
He's
You know?
humble. Yeah, he's like a humble working class Venezuelan, and he specifically said that in their interview too. He's an average Venezuelan who, and just like Chavez, that they're focused on the interests of the people. And he specifically said too that the opposition continued to fail, and they had 25 elections. 23 of them was won by the Bolivarian Revolution, and he was specifically saying that we'll continue to defeat them, even though they continue to try, even though the U.S. continues to try, we'll defeat them with votes, with the people, with freedom, with all these institutions and everything that we've created.
Hell
Um,
yeah. And it's crazy that he said what was I mean, he talks about their democracy too. And for those of you who don't know, they have like one of the most secure democracies in the world. It's crazy. Like they have like fingerprint scanners. Like it's like that.
Paper ballot.
And that's why the United States referencing that. So the United States, which is something I learned from this interview, we always have our opposition run. But the opposition in the last race asked to move the election up earlier. Maduro actually agreed. They said, cool. I mean, I'm sure he was confident. And then the United States told the dude, the opposition, I can't remember his name. What was his name? Do you remember?
I think it was Jorge or Julio Jorges. Sorry, yeah,
Julio Jorge. So they tell him,
Rex
no, you're
Tillerson.
not allowed to run. But hold up. I thought that the whole reason the United States was getting involved in Venezuela the last couple of years is because of an illegitimate election. And we just told somebody not to run, but
And
we
they
also been,
threatened to sanction him. That's like
yeah.
probably yeah.
And they threatened to sanction the opposition after they were telling y'all, everybody else, oh, we have to go in there because Maduro is stopping the opposition from running for office.
It's
He's
projected.
assassinating the competition. And my question, of course, is always, um, hold up, if he's assassinating the competition, why is Juan Guaido still alive? Why is Juan Guaido not in jail? And in my opinion, the answer is pretty clear. Juan Guaido is not in jail because Maduro is not a cold-blooded killer. And remember what he said about the Washington Post journalist? Was it Washington Post?
Univision.
Was it Univision
Okay,
that
Ramos.
the reporter that we sent? Then he
Yeah,
immediately labeled him the dictator.
immediately
Yeah,
called the dictator. Yeah, that was
he's
Jorge Ramos from Univision.
when Max Blumenthal asked him like, what do you do about something like that? How do you handle that? Was it a problem? And Maduro, and once again, the most humble of ways is like, we move on. You know his karma will come back to him. He will deal with those problems. But we have our own problems here, and you can just tell he's his ego is rarely, if ever, damaged by the things that we are doing to him and his people. It's always about the people. Even whenever, and obviously Max is being genuine, like he wasn't trying to like say make it about Maduro, but you're talking with the president, right? So you should talk about him a little bit. But every time he tried to bring it back to how Maduro was being smeared, Maduro didn't talk about all the great things that he is doing and what he's accomplished. He talks about the people. He talks about the people's needs. He talks about how the people's needs are being hindered and not being met sometimes because of the United States. But he talks about the people working together to get things done and to oh my God, the meeting about was it called the with 120 countries we're
Oh,
all
the
meeting.
Sahel Forum.
Yeah, they were. What do you want to tell them? Talk about.
Yeah, so 21 of the country I thought that this is the most interesting part. 21 of the 120 some countries that participated, those are all victims of our sanctions. 21 countries. And I mean, we don't even know I can't even list what those countries are. I mean, I know maybe a couple, but we
Or
really
the
have no
reasons
idea
for the
which ones.
sanctions.
Huh?
Or the reasons for the sanctions.
For regime change, yeah. Yeah. It's specifically to devastate the people so that they are willing to overthrow their government. And that's exactly what they were hoping with Juan Guaido, that the people would be so desperate that they'd be like, okay, this is all Maduro's fault. Let's just have a transition of power so that we'll be saved from the devastating economy, which was actually caused by the US.
And I think that what was amazing was what he was talking about, like what that conference was about. It was like we were addressing climate change. We
Yep.
were addressing
Workers' rights,
oh
feminism.
man, race issues like
Mhm.
obviously poverty and all like things, the conversations that he was having with Max about like just the things that they were talking about. I'm like, man, this guy kind of
When he
sounds like a progressive to
Yeah.
me. Like, and I mean, he did go out of his way to call the Trump administration like they're basically KKK.
Yeah, he
I
calls them
mean, and if you understand the
USN.
history of our foreign policy, it would be absolutely accurate to describe not only Trump's administration, but basically every administration
Yeah,
before that as such, because we only target countries with people of color, uh, and or where people of color are trying to rise up, like in Venezuela, like in Cuba, whenever when Fidel Castro was trying to desegregate and obviously put people of color, get just not even like take over, but provide equity of opportunity. Like with Nelson Mandela, the Middle East in its entirety, Vietnam, North Korea. We don't try to bully, I don't know, Sweden like that. We don't try to bully, hell, we don't try and bully Russia like that either. I mean, we're constantly, having issues with them. We don't, hell no, we don't treat
no,
Russia like we try to treat Venezuela because, but there's like also like I said, a mutual level of unfortunate, like it's like this understanding, like we don't treat them who talk like us, practice the same religion as us, look like us, the same way we treat these other people. It's sad, but it's true. So that was pretty a pretty interesting part of the conversation. But overall, I just feel like we're just, oh man, the blockade, we're literally stopping food.
yeah,
And who was it? It wasn't Bolton. No, the opposition, the current opposition, basically was straight up like, oh yeah, it's going to cause a famine. Hopefully to get the job done. In a report, he said this. The opposition said this in a report and said it like it's an achievement. So you have one guy in Maduro who all he does is talk about caring for the people, providing food for the people, giving them 2 meals a month, and then you have the opposition, oftentimes propped up by the United States, which Maduro actually discusses. You have the opposition talking about causing a famine just so they can get office.
yeah.
So it's
They're
crazy.
blocking 25,000 tons of soy-made products, and then the vice president is
Oh
calling for
damn,
the
and they vegan products. Oh lord, man, this man Maduro's a vegan too. Hot damn Bojangles.
no, it's just like soy made, like soy oil or whatever. But
Oh, and they're about to put a program together to get the essential proteins to their
yeah,
people as well.
they already had that. They just implemented that, and now the U.S. is sanctioning the animal protein portion
Yeah,
of the CLAP program. Yeah, and
yeah.
that provides food to 80% of Venezuelans. That's a huge chunk of
Hey, but we care about Venezuelans. That's why we have to starve them to death. Like
yeah.
that's
And
how
he
else we
specifically said that. He said we
tough
want
love.
to take Venezuelans' food away. He basically was suggesting that that's our ultimate goal. We're not here to spread democracy at all.
And
So,
this is the
and
opposition, one of the opposition
and
people.
the interesting thing about the blockade is that it's the first time in 30 years that Washington is doing that to a sovereign country. This entire blockade, um, restricting their food
Really,
supply. Yeah, I was in a Telesur article.
that's crazy.
Yeah, and
That's
it's like
crazy.
it's near a full blockade. It's pretty much, and it's all like on the assets of the government, and that was through Trump's executive order. So
Well,
so yeah, so the vice president is calling on the UN to take serious action against the United States for doing something because this is a sovereign nation. This is their right
hmm
to food. This isn't
it
targeted
wasn't U.S.
sanctions that would be
approved. It wasn't UN
no.
approved. The
Yeah, and
Security
he
Council didn't
actually
approve it.
Maduro was actually commenting on even the sanctions on Iraq. Those were actually multilateral, and that was actually done by the UN.
Mhm.
This is just unilateral,
He
done by
actually
the
still says
US.
it's unjust. He's like,
Yeah, but yeah, but
they
he
were
still said
unjust,
even
but
though
he
it
was
was
like, they were at
unjust,
least went through a process.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
those 120 countries, by the way, they also talked about strengthening the UN. So that's like, in which
right,
I didn't even know those are
right,
conferences that actually happened, to be honest with you.
yeah,
So
no,
like, you see, the world is coalescing against the empire,
mhm,
and you'd be silly as hell to ignore it. And really quick before we finish this up, the we John Bolton, and Maduro describes this event in the interview, tried to assassinate Maduro. And not only Maduro, but tried to assassinate his entire cabinet. So there would be complete and utter chaos in Venezuela.
That was
and
almost a year.
nobody knew about it.
Actually, yeah, basically a year
Could
ago.
you imagine? Could you imagine if somebody tried to assassinate Donald Trump right now? The whole world would be put on high alert. Literally, our entire airport infrastructure would change. Like they would strengthen the Patriot Act even
Oh yeah.
more. Like, oh my God, the whole hammer will come down. And
Mhm.
we just casually tried to drone strike
Yeah.
Maduro. And it's sad to me because if this, like I said, if this is our president, it would be international news, but it's Maduro, and we know who it linked back to, so it never gets talked about.
Mhm.
So you really got to start wondering if you're one of those people who, let's say, you don't have to. I don't know Maduro, so I can't say whether or not I like him as a person, but I can say that the people have elected him and
Yeah.
multiple times in one of the most strict, not strict in a bad way, but strict as in they don't allow
Yeah, they
proprietary
yeah.
software. They don't like it, everything is open source. Everything is fingerprint based.
And
Everything is
they
verified.
actually record all like when they're counting the ballots, they record that so then people can
Hmm.
watch it and see for
Yeah,
themselves.
hand
Yeah.
counted paper
So
ballot. So like, well,
so we're
if
going
that
through.
guy's in charge over and over and over again, the people are putting him there. Who are we to interrupt that or interfere with that?
Yeah.
We need to be holding our government accountable, and their people will hold their government accountable.
And he was also
Uh,
saying how 99% of the people there are registered to vote automatically,
oh
whereas the
yeah, and then
US.
68.
Hey, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button to get all of our notifications if you like that episode of Mikasa Sukasa. You can also help continue to grow our show by donating to our Patreon and helping us hit our goal of 500 patrons. But remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.